Charting Toward Intimacy covers mature topics. Listener discretion is advised. Charting Toward Intimacy covers mature topics. Listener discretion is advised. Before we get started with this episode, I want to give a little bit of an intro. Kathleen and I here are going to be discussing the possibility of me having a method error pregnancy. I'm not actually going to tell you whether or not I am pregnant until the end of the episode. So please listen in. But we decided to record this episode because this is something that I think a lot of you listening either have been through or are maybe afraid of going through this exact scenario. And so I think it's really important to hear these kind of conversations happen and to have solidarity in some of the feelings that I experienced in this situation. So here you go. Hey there, welcome to Charting Toward Intimacy, where we're expanding the natural family planning conversation. I'm your host, Ellen Holloway. All right, we are back with another NFP in Real Life episode with Kathleen.
Hello, everybody. Hello,
All
Ellen.
Right. This episode, we just decided moments before recording what this topic was going to be.
Literally less than 45 seconds ago.
Yeah, literally. And it was just like total Holy Spirit moment that this is the conversation that we should have, because this is the point of these episodes. This, NFP in Real Life episodes. So right now, I don't know. I might be pregnant. Maybe. And it would be a method error pregnancy.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And it's freaking me out a little bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, let me give some background.
Do that first, and then we'll process. This is literally an episode where we're going to process this
my emotions
situation, like just right now, together with whoever is going to be listening in.
Yeah,
and this is what it's all
probably about. I will wait to put this episode out until either I'm ready to announce the pregnancy if I am pregnant, or we'll see. Again, we're going to process that. Or until I confirm that I'm not pregnant, then I'll put this episode out, because this feeling that I'm having right now, I know a lot of you guys listening, you've had this feeling before, or you're worried about having this feeling. You're worried that this is going to happen. And this is a real life thing that happens. We have pregnancy scares when we are not ready to be pregnant. So some background about why this is a pregnancy scare, why would be a method error pregnancy. So I started using Marquette. Oh, I should find out exactly the day that I started using Marquette. So I am 8.5 months postpartum. Been breastfeeding. And my baby is started to get some longer stretches. He had one night a couple weeks ago where he actually slept the whole night, and you'd think it would be amazing, but then the 2-year-old woke up a bunch of times that night, so it was just a disaster.
That always happens.
That's
if
my
it's
life
not
there.
one, it's another one.
Yeah, exactly. Come on, I just want some sleep.
Yeah, exactly.
That's part of the reason why I don't want to be pregnant. Anyway. Okay, so let's see. I started using Marquette. Gosh, it's been a couple of months now. I know that I've ordered 3 boxes of test sticks. So what is that?
30,
maybe 3
30
months.
sticks per box, right?
There's 30 per box, and on postpartum, you basically use one every single day.
Right.
So I've been using it for about 3 months. Basically I was trying to use symptothermal, meaning that it was kind of a mucus only, and it was too much for my mental state this time around. Last time my fertility returned earlier. So it just wasn't as much abstinence last time. And this time it was just no, you know what? I want to go Marquette. And it was great because so easy. Oh my gosh. I did not have to think about it, except for the fact that I had to make sure that I peed in a cup
instead of just being.
And reset your monitor every 10 days.
Yes, resetting the monitor every 10 days. Although that was really easy because the clear blue sticks, I thought that was going to be confusing, but the clear blue sticks, they're all bunched up in packs of 10. And so
smart.
Yeah. So I would take one like bunch and I'd put it into like a different little container. And then when I like did the last stick, then I would just reset it that morning.
That's really smart. I think when I was doing it, they weren't bunched like that.
Oh yeah. It's great. They're bunched.
So smart. Yeah.
So anyway, yeah. Okay. So I'm not going to go through the protocol of Marquette because first of all, I'm not a Marquette instructor. And second of all, like this is not for like learning how to use Marquette. But essentially, and again, don't use this as the rules of Marquette. But essentially, when you're in cycle 0, every low is available. Essentially. So I had a low, and then I had 3 highs, and then I had a peak. So that was 5 days pre-peak. Well, and I guess like you can fill in the gaps there. Like we utilized that low day.
Yeah.
So that was 5 days pre-peak. That is within the range of possibility. Also, that day was a method defined usable day. Mm-hmm. And so, so I'm frustrated right now. I'm really, really frustrated. And part of the reason why I'm frustrated, and again, I'm like putting all of this on me, of course, right?
Yeah.
I am frustrated because I know that day I saw mucus. I remember, but I was like, well, I'm using the Marquette method. So I'm just going to use the Marquette method. This is fine. I know I saw mucus.
Yeah.
And so I'm like frustrated with myself of like, I should have just like, I should have said something and been like, you know what, let's just wait today. And like tomorrow, if I don't have mucus, like we'll be right. And then I would have been like, oh, whew, you know?
Yeah.
The other reason, so like, I think a lot of you listening are probably like, this is your first ovulation. Like that's not all that common, all that kind of stuff. So let me give you more background as to why I think I might be pregnant. It's my last return of fertility. I had like 4 days post peak and then I got my period. I had like 3 high temperatures. It was like with the symptothermal rule, like I had exactly enough to fulfill the symptothermal rule. And then my period started.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, you know, so I am at 6 days post peak, 7 post the first peak. Cause there was like 2 days of LH peak. Right. And so this is a much stronger ovulation than I've ever had in return to fertility. Now I've only had one experience of return to fertility.
Right.
But I mean, typically, you know, your past is indicative of your future as far as your body goes. I don't know, maybe I'm in kind of like a healthier state now. And so I have stronger ovulation. Maybe the fact that my return to fertility is a couple of months later. It was at 5 months with my first, and this is at 8 months. I don't know. But either way, regardless of the reason, I am freaking out because I don't want to be pregnant. I don't want to be pregnant. I really, really don't. And of course, we would welcome the child. Like there's no question of what would happen to this child. They would be welcomed into this family, like with so open arms, and everybody would be so excited and all of that. My goodness, I'm starting to get emotional.
Maybe you are pregnant.
I'm like feeling it. Yeah, maybe I am pregnant. Oh, no. But I mean, my husband and I had talked about it before that, like, I wanted to try to wait a little bit longer in between the baby that we have right now, my son, and like a next baby. So my daughter and my son are 2 years apart. Mm-hmm. And we were like, you know, I'm feeling really overwhelmed right now with these 2 kids. Like, my daughter is very needy. She is 2.5. She is needy.
Yeah. They are needy at that age. I've got one needy too.
And so I was, you know, we were just like, wow, maybe giving it maybe like 2.5 years or maybe 3 years in between the two, just to kind of like give myself a break, because I'm home with the kids, and it's just been a lot with my personality and all of that. And so yeah, so I'm just like, I would be looking at roughly like 18 months, 17 months between the two pregnancies.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, between the two babies.
Between the two babies, yeah.
And that's just, that's so soon.
Yeah. I mean, my oldest two are 18 months apart, and I remember it feeling like a lot. I mean, I think though, because I was going from 1 to 2 and not 2 to 3, I do remember feeling like that guilt of like, I mean, yeah, it was also just like we were using Creighton at the time, and that was like, it was just not a good method for us. And so we really didn't know what we were doing. And so, you know, there was that same panic. But then also that guilt of like, this is the only child, like I have this experience of like mothering and pregnancy and all this sort of stuff with only this child. Like it was like a really special bond. And I felt almost guilty, like going through it again with a new child so quickly, like, and so soon. But regardless, I'll tell you, I mean, I've been in this situation, right? Like I think most people listening,
I think I've been through one of these too. I'll tell you about my previous experience with this too.
Yeah. Like a lot of us have been in this situation already. And the worst part about it, like I have some, you know, maybe helpful, maybe not helpful, like, right. Like comforting reminders that we can talk about if we want to, but sometimes you just need to sit in the suck, right? Like, let's just sit in it together. And I think it's always the worst, just knowing you have to wait that like week.
Right. I can't take a pregnancy
test
yet.
Yeah. It's like, I know very well what could be happening inside my body, but I can't know whether or not it's happening for another week.
Yeah. Also, like, the pregnancy tests that I have in my bedside drawer, they're expired. I'm still definitely going to use them, but like, I'm also not going to trust them.
That is, so you're going out and buying new ones regardless.
Yeah. I mean, like, unless it's like, if it's positive, then I'll probably trust that.
So
I don't know.
A friend one time in my life, one time who got a false positive.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Was it on an expired pregnancy test?
It was not expired because I bought it for her.
Oh,
brought it to her. But
I don't buy expired pregnancy tests.
It was not expired, but it was a blue dye one.
Oh.
And I hear that the blue dye is less reliable than the red dye.
I've heard that too.
I think it might have been like clear blue. It might have been a clear blue.
Yeah.
But it was the only time I've ever heard. Yeah. I don't know why either, but it was the only time I've ever heard of a false positive happening.
I think my expired pregnancy tests are red dye pregnancy tests. So.
Okay. Then I'd say
but we'll see. We'll see if I don't know, like maybe I'll get my period today. And like we're recording this episode and then I'm going to get my period and then I'm going to like put this episode out in a week or two.
But here's the thing. The point of this episode is not like Ellen is possibly pregnant. No. Like the point of this episode is, hey, we're all in this. Like we've all been in these situations and like, yeah, like this is like, I'm like honestly thinking of this episode as just like a bunch of women sitting around having coffee and talking someone through a really hard time. You know what I mean? And like, not that it's like a really, really hard time, but this is like a communal episode where we can all just be like, girl, been there. Like, who knows how it's going to turn out, but like, we got you, you know? And like, this is going to be fine either way, you know, like it's just to kind of like sit in it together and know that we're all in this, in the same sort of experience, though we have different stories and different, you know, little experiences within it. But at the end of the day, like we're all kind of trying to make it through the same thing, you know?
Yeah.
And I think it's like really cool that, we hopped on here this morning and you were just like, so here's what I'm going through. And I'm like, let's talk about this today, because it's like, because this is it. This is NFP in real life. This is what it's like.
This is why I really encourage all of you to find at least one other person who practices NFP.
Yeah.
For when you get in these kinds of situations, because I'm going to be honest, like I wasn't even sure if I was going to share this with Kathleen, because I'm just like, I'm feeling like it's my fault. I'm feeling like, I told you guys about like the mucus. I'm feeling like that's my fault. I'm feeling like the fact that we used Marquette, that's my fault too. Like I'm the one who suggested that. Like I'm just feeling like it's all on me right now, which is irrational.
Yeah, it is. Number one.
First of all, right. And it's funny because I can see that from an objective place, but that's not how I feel. Subjectively, I still feel like this is all my fault. And just that, like, I don't know. Yeah, just a lot of blah, right?
Yeah, a lot of blah.
But I wasn't sure if I was going to share this with Kathleen, and then I just ended up doing, like, I don't know, we were just chatting about what was going on in our lives and your outie belly button and frustrations with that, right?
My 34-week outie belly button.
And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to share this because, I need some solidarity here, and I'm feeling stressed, and I can only talk to my husband about it so much because he doesn't know what it's like to be pregnant, and Kathleen's pregnant right now. Like,
yeah. And she's over being pregnant. So she knows what it's like.
Can I tell you my additional fear with this pregnancy? And this is incredibly irrational. Let me just throw this out here to everybody.
Preface that.
So I love twins. I think twins are the coolest thing. Identical twins. I mean, fraternal twins, sure, too. But like, I think identical twins are so cool. I have been surrounded by twins my entire life. My preschool class had 2 sets of twins in it. My 8th grade graduating class of 12 people in the school that I had, my 8th grade graduating class of 12 people had 3 sets of twins. Half the class was twins.
That is so funny.
Mm-hmm. I've had twins like all throughout my life. And I think they're so cool. And I've like read so many articles about just like the nature versus nurture thing, and like twins that were raised apart and then they end up doing like the same job. Wow. Or like twins who have married like one twin,
I've seen
right?
those.
And then they have kids and their kids look like siblings, and like genetically they like kind of are siblings, but they're cousins.
That's so funny.
So I'm fascinated by twins. I just always have been. And people have always, like, they've told me my whole life, like, this fascination that I have with twins, they're like, you're going to have twins at some point, right? They've just told me that, right? The day that I ovulated, not the day, I don't know, like it's always within a range, but the like peak day, that day that I got a peak, I had not one, but 2 instances of a double egg yolk when I was making eggs.
Oh my gosh, you did. You told me about that.
I told you about that. Yeah, I did. Which, okay, again, this is totally irrational, you guys. This is the things that are going through my brain right now, right?
But they're like those little, like, I know exactly what you mean, because there's no, like, this could be just total coincidence. It could mean absolutely nothing. And is something that most likely does. Yeah. But at the same time, you see them as like little, like, like, so hey there from God, right? Like a little like
twins right now,
like a little preparation signs from God to be like, hey, just remember this, right? Like, just
And
again, I see you, like, Ellen.
Like in a couple of weeks, you could be listening to this episode and maybe you listened at the beginning and there's this preface of like, hey guys, I'm not actually pregnant. This was irrational. These were all of my irrational fears and blah, blah, blah. Or you could have had a preface and you're like, oh man, she's pregnant and she has twins. Like,
That's so funny though.
So anyway, so all of my like fear that I am pregnant, I am also convinced that if I am pregnant with twins. Like I am convinced of that fact.
That's so funny.
And so that's like just creating this like bigger like fear of 9 months from now, or I don't know, with twins, right? Like 7.5 months from now.
Yeah. No, exactly.
That that our family they would double the number of kids that we have would double. Right.
Yeah.
And so, I am totally wrecked by this right now. And it's scaring me a little bit. And then also like, there's just things going on in my body. I'm having like weird cramping stuff, which like for me, that could be, oh, I'm pregnant, or that could be, oh, hey, I'm going to get my period today. So I'm just like, what is happening?
I know. And you like start looking into like every little sensation and feeling, and like, you know, it all goes right to your head.
Oh, and my milk supply has just tanked the past couple of days.
I was going to say, and how long the past couple of days?
Like, I would say since Monday, and we're recording this on a Saturday.
Yeah.
So it's not quite a week. But my milk has tanked. Now, that could be because my body is working really hard right now. It just ovulated and now it's getting ready to, you know, shed the uterine lining. That absolutely could be the reason why my
that's what I was just going to say.
But the other reason why milk supply drops incredibly is pregnancy, especially when, and I don't know if this is like scientifically proven, but I've heard colloquially, if you get pregnant before like a year, before your baby is a year, your milk supply is much more likely to drop.
Yeah.
I don't actually know. But also, I mean, like he's still like really reliant on milk right now.
I don't listen. Now, okay, I'm gonna give some of the like what I do in this situation, which some people may find helpful, some people may not, you know, but when I end up in this situation where it's just like, you know what, like this is completely out of my control and I have nothing that I can do about it. I mean, period at all. Like, you just can't do anything about it. I can do. But like, you can't even know what's going on for like I said, like at least a week or whatever. This is when I just like fall back into the arms of God. I'm just like, Lord, you just need to keep me calm. You need to keep me in the right perspective of all of this, you know, and it's a great time to say a novena.
You know what? I have been saying a novena.
There you go. Because I mean, it's like 9 days, you know, so it's like usually by the time you end the novena, you can probably test sometime around, you know, the novena, when the novena ends, depending on when you start. So it's a great time to just kind of like really lean into God. And I think that sometimes, and I know he's done this for me, that I've had these scares that end up like being, you know, negative pregnancy tests, right? But it's like always just this invitation to turn back to him. And sometimes the way that I work and the way that I kind of like go day to day, like things feel hectic all the time. And I'm really, really bad at sticking to a prayer routine. I'm really bad about it. But when I have something like this, that's just causing me stress and causing me some like additional anxiety or whatever, and I just know it's completely out of my control, those are the times that I just like always end up prioritizing like my prayer, because it's just like, it's like a kid being like, Daddy, I need you. You know what I mean? Like, it's just that, I don't know. And he's done that for me. He's given me those scares sometimes just to be like, come on back. Like, come on, like focus on me a little bit more, you know?
Right. That's such a good point.
Yeah. So that sometimes, you know,
well, and he'll do this too. Like he'll give us pregnancies to also do the exact same thing.
Exactly.
To say, turn back. And so you're so spot on that regardless of the outcome of what is going on here, like God is telling me, I need you to turn back to me. I need you to trust me. And again, objectively, I know everything's going to be fine. My last pregnancy was very healthy. My delivery was really, really smooth. Like I recovered so quickly. Like it was it was a dream. I was in the hospital for like 4 hours and then I had the baby. Like it was, I mean, it was like as good as you can get, right? Like we got to go home a day early from the hospital. Like, you know, it was great. My body's totally healthy right now. I would be able to do this.
Yeah, you would. Like, that's the big thing. You can do this, right?
Yeah.
Like, no matter what, you can do it either way. And yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I think sometimes people end up in these situations and they just want to sit in the suck. I mean, I get that way too. Like, I just want to sit in the suck for like a while, you know, before, but then I always end up stressing myself out too much. And then it's like, all right, Lord, like I need you to take some of this and I need to know that I can trust you. I need to know that like you have the best plan for me and you know what that is better than I know what that is. And whatever happens, like we're going to make it, you know?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. And then you always got to think in retro, like you got to think in the future too. That's the other thing that I do. I think forward to the future. Like right now, I would be feeling like you, like, I just really don't want to be pregnant. Like I physically don't want to be pregnant. And okay, yeah, what could I have done differently on that day? Like I saw some mucus and I wish I would have said blah, blah, blah. But say you're pregnant 10 years down the road when you have this baby or multiple babies or whatever it might be, right? Like you're going to feel so differently about it at that point. You're going to say, wow, praise God, I did use that day.
Yeah.
You know, praise God. Like I didn't think twice about that, you know, that little bit of mucus that I had. Like praise God for these souls. Right. So, and again, that might not be helpful for some people right now.
Right. In the moment.
All get to a point. I think we all get to a point where we really do just need to put the suck aside and just lean into God and just be like, you know what? Like you do know better than me. And in 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is, I'm going to know that you know better than me.
Yeah.
If this ends up being a positive test.
Right.
Right? We don't know.
You know, so I've had this happen once before, like just an ultimate pregnancy scare. Because I had a 21-day cycle. I think I've talked about this on the on the podcast before, but like my peak day was like day 7 or 8 or something.
Whoa.
Like that. Yeah. Like it was, so maybe it was like 10. Maybe my peak day was like 10. It was really, really early. And we had utilized like day 6 or something. I think we were using a 650-day rule. Like, and so like we, sorry, that term is from Sympto Pro, all of you. If you're like, what did she just say? But yeah, we were using a 6-day rule, which would mean that the first 6 days were available and you don't really have to like check as much. Right. And so that whole time, and that was when like ovulation was good, right? I didn't get my period until like 12 days, 13 days post peak, right? Like,
wow. Yeah.
It was a long luteal phase. And, but what that led to actually was my husband and I going, well, maybe it's time. Like,
yeah.
And so
exactly.
Part of me is just like, I really hope that's not what this leads to. Like, if I'm not pregnant, I still don't want to be pregnant next cycle. Right?
Yep. And that's fair. That's fair. You know, like we're allowed to want those breaks. We're allowed to, you know, just like, I mean, we're allowed to need time.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, I think it's just above all, no matter what happens, the most important thing is just to kind of take it as an invitation from God to just lean in, you know, in whatever way he needs you to lean in, you know, even if it's just by really committing to some sort of specific prayer time or, you know, whatever it is that, again, I'm awful at prioritizing. And I know a lot of other moms out there are awful at prioritizing or even figuring out like, how do I even schedule it in the day? But when stuff like this happens, like you figure it out all of a sudden, you know, and I know God knows me well enough to be like, hey, I'm really going to increase your anxiety so that you remember who you're dependent on here, right? Like, yes, that's always what he has to do for me. Which is awful. I'm terrible. I'm a terrible Catholic.
Yes. That whole total reliance on God thing is something.
I know it's really hard.
It's hard. Really hard. It is really, really hard. Yeah.
But it's in times like this that it's so good for me and so comforting, you know, and that's what I'm saying. Like, it takes these situations and these instances for me to be like, wow, Lord, like, thank you so much for like, it's like, I can't fathom living my life without a faith in times like these.
Yeah.
Same thing. Like when like close people die, you know what I mean? This is like a tangent, but when you like experience death, right? Like, it's just like, I can't imagine going through this without knowing that you are there with me, you know, and that I can fall back on you, and that I can rely on you, and that you are walking me through this whole thing.
Yeah.
And the promise, you know what I mean? Just like the promise that he's made to all of us, you know, to like be our Father, and to, you know, I don't know, like, these are the moments that I just kind of like am like really moved and hit hard by that. So I don't know, maybe that's what this is. Maybe it's not. Maybe we just don't know.
Yeah. A reminder to fully trust in God. All right. Well, I think we've chatted for the entirety of this episode. I'm going to append an intro onto this one way or another in a couple of days. And then
actually, I think you should make it at the end. Don't tell people in the very beginning. You got to tell people at the end of the episode what the result of that test is, because oh yeah, you can't do it at the beginning. Don't do that.
Okay. That's a great idea. All right. So you'll find out in moments.
Or not, whether Ellen is actually pregnant or not.
Yeah. Did we say any dates?
No.
No. Okay. We've only, no. Okay. Good. Cause you'll find out, like, you know, or I'm going to put this out either in a couple of weeks if I'm not pregnant, or in a couple of months if I am. But good, we didn't put any dates. Okay, all right.
No, we did not.
Now you'll find out.
All right, everybody, here's the moment. I am not pregnant. I did actually end up having a very strong ovulation, and had a very normal luteal phase, which definitely freaked me out for a solid week after we recorded this episode. But something that we did mention toward the end, about turning yourself back to God, turning your life back over to God. These kinds of situations, these are those reminders to turn right back to God and give our lives over to Him. Thanks so much for listening. Be sure to follow us on Instagram if you aren't already, at Charting Toward Intimacy. And if you have any questions, comments, or episode topic ideas, please reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you. And this particular episode, I think, might be really helpful to a friend that you have. So if there is someone that you think of that might really enjoy or might really find this episode helpful, please share it. Thanks so much. Until next time.